I thought my husband would chase me after divorce. He left the country instead. Eleanor Carter had always prided herself on being the kind of woman who could read people like an open book. At 32, she lived in a cozy suburban home nestled in the heart of Austin, Texas, a place where white picket fences lined quiet streets and neighbors exchanged polite smiles over freshly mowed lawns. Her life was picture perfect, or so it seemed from the outside. She worked part-time as a freelance graphic designer, dedicating the rest of her energy to maintaining what she believed was an unshakable marriage with Ryan Mitchell, her husband, of 7 years. Ryan, a soft-spoken software engineer with a penchant for late-night coding sessions, had always been the steady counterpart to Eleanor's vibrant personality. While she filled their home with laughter, art, and spontaneous weekend getaways, he anchored them with his calm demeanor and methodical approach to life. Together, they were a study in contrasts. But isn't that what made marriages work? Or so Eleanor told herself. It wasn't until recently that cracks began to appear in the foundation of their seemingly idyllic relationship. Ryan, once eager to share stories about his day or discuss future plans, now retreated into silence. He started coming home later than usual, claiming work deadlines, though something about his evasiveness didn't sit right with Eleanor. When she tried to broach the subject, he'd brush her off with vague reassurances. "I'm fine. Just stressed. Don't worry about me." But how could she not worry when the man she loved seemed to be slipping further away each day? The tension reached its peak one evening when Eleanor stumbled upon Ryan's phone left unlocked on the kitchen counter. It wasn't snooping, she reasoned. It was concern. As she scrolled through his messages, looking for any clue to explain his emotional withdrawal, she found nothing overtly incriminating. No secret affairs, no alarming texts. Just a series of cryptic notes he'd sent himself. "Remember Bali, and freedom is closer than you think." What did they mean? Was he planning something? The unanswered questions gnawed at her, planting seeds of doubt she couldn't ignore. That night, lying beside him in bed, Eleanor felt the weight of the distance between them more acutely than ever before. She wanted to ask him directly, to demand answers, but fear held her back. Fear of what he might say. Fear of losing the illusion of control she clung to so desperately. Instead, she turned toward him, studying his profile in the dim light. His face was relaxed, almost peaceful, but there was something unfamiliar in his expression, an emptiness that chilled her to the core. For the first time, Eleanor allowed herself to entertain a terrifying thought. What if the man she thought she knew better than anyone else was in fact a stranger? And worse still, what if this growing chasm between them wasn't just temporary? As sleep eluded her that night, Eleanor resolved to confront Ryan soon. But deep down, a nagging voice whispered that some truths are harder to face than others, and that sometimes love alone isn't enough to hold two people together. The days following Eleanor's discovery of Ryan's cryptic notes were a blur of conflicting emotions. She oscillated between anger, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Determined to salvage their marriage, she decided to take matters into her own hands. After all, wasn't that what a good partner would do? If Ryan was struggling, then it was her duty to pull him out of whatever dark hole he had fallen into. Or so she convinced herself. Eleanor began by reaching out to friends who might offer insight or advice. Her closest confidant, Claire, was a therapist specializing in couples counseling. Over coffee one afternoon, Eleanor recounted the changes in Ryan's behavior, careful not to reveal too much about the notes on his phone. Claire listened intently, nodding thoughtfully before offering her perspective. "Sometimes," Claire said gently, "people withdraw because they don't know how to ask for help. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It just means they're drowning. And maybe they think dragging you down with them won't solve anything." Her words struck a chord with Eleanor, but they also left her feeling more burdened than before. The idea that Ryan might be suffering silently filled her with guilt. Why hadn't she noticed sooner? Had she been too preoccupied with her own life to see the signs? These questions haunted her as she returned home, resolved to try harder. That evening, Eleanor prepared Ryan's favorite meal, grilled salmon with garlic mashed potatoes, and set the table with candles, hoping to recreate the warmth of their early days together. When he walked through the door, his expression softened momentarily at the sight, but it quickly returned to its usual guarded neutrality. "I thought we could talk," Eleanor said, forcing a smile as they sat down to eat. "About us?" Ryan hesitated, fork poised midair. "What about us?" "You've seemed distant lately," she ventured cautiously. "I just want to understand what's going on. Is there something I can do to help?" For a moment, Ryan looked like he might open up. His shoulders slumped slightly, and he exhaled deeply. But then, as if retreating behind an invisible wall, he shook his head. "It's not you, Eleanor. You've done everything right. This is me. I'm just stuck." His words stung more than any accusation ever could. Stuck? What did that even mean? And why wouldn't he let her in? Frustration bubbled beneath the surface, threatening to spill over, but Eleanor swallowed it down. She couldn't afford to push him away, not yet. Over the next few weeks, she redoubled her efforts to be the supportive wife she believed Ryan needed. She encouraged him to take breaks from work, suggested weekend hikes to clear his mind, and even offered to accompany him to therapy if he wanted. Each attempt was met with polite resistance. "I'll be fine," he'd say, or "let's see how things go." But nothing changed. In fact, the gap between them only widened. One particularly difficult night, after another fruitless conversation, Eleanor found herself sitting alone on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. A wave of exhaustion washed over her, not physical, but emotional. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge the toll this dynamic was taking on her. She was pouring every ounce of energy into saving their marriage, yet it felt like she was fighting a losing battle. Was this really sustainable? Could she keep giving so much of herself without expecting anything in return? As these thoughts swirled in her mind, a memory surfaced from years ago, a quote she'd read in a book. "Love shouldn't cost you your soul." At the time, she'd dismissed it as overly dramatic, but now it resonated deeply. Was she sacrificing too much of herself for a relationship that no longer seemed reciprocal? And if so, where did that leave her? The internal conflict gnawed at her relentlessly. Part of her still clung to the hope that Ryan would snap out of whatever funk he was in, that they could rebuild what they once had. But another part, growing, louder with each passing day, whispered that perhaps it was time to prioritize her own well-being. After all, how could she continue to support someone else when she barely recognized herself anymore? As dawn broke the next morning, Eleanor made a silent vow to herself. She would give Ryan one last chance to meet her halfway. If he refused, she would have no choice but to reconsider the future of their marriage and her role in it. Eleanor's resolve to confront Ryan came sooner than she expected. One rainy Tuesday evening, as she sat at the kitchen table sketching designs for a client project, Ryan walked in with an envelope in his hand. His face was unreadable, but the weight of his presence filled the room like a storm cloud. Without saying a word, he placed the envelope on the table and stepped back. "What's this?" Eleanor asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her. Attempt to sound calm. "It's paperwork," Ryan replied, his tone flat. "For the divorce." The words hit her like a freight train. Divorce? Her mind reeled, struggling to process what she had just heard. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to work through their problems together, rebuild what they had lost. How could he give up so easily? "You're joking, right?" she managed to say, though her voice betrayed her rising panic. "We haven't even tried counseling. I have," Ryan interrupted, his voice firmer now. "I've thought about this for months, Eleanor. I can't keep pretending everything's okay when it's not. For either of us." His words felt like a slap across the face. Months? He had been planning this for months, and he hadn't said a word. The betrayal cut deeper than she could have imagined. She stared at him, searching for some flicker of remorse, some indication that he might reconsider. But there was nothing. Just that same emptiness she'd seen in his eyes before. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. "Why didn't you fight for us?" Ryan hesitated, then sighed heavily. "Because I don't think fighting will fix anything. Sometimes letting go is the only way forward." Letting go. The phrase echoed in Eleanor's mind, hollow and final. She wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, to make him see how much she still loved him. But something stopped her, a strange mix of pride and resignation. If he was willing to walk away without a fight, maybe their marriage truly was beyond saving. In the days that followed, Eleanor moved through life in a daze. The house felt eerily quiet without Ryan's presence, even though he had already spent most nights holed up in his office or out running errands. Boxes began appearing in corners of the living room as they divided their belongings. Every item seemed to carry memories she wasn't ready to part with. The coffee mug he always used, the blanket they shared on movie nights, the photo album, chronicling their happiest moments. But amidst the chaos of splitting assets and signing documents, one discovery sent shockwaves through Eleanor's already fragile state. While sorting through bank statements, she noticed several large withdrawals from their joint account over the past few months. At first, she assumed they were for work-related expenses, but curiosity got the better of her. Digging deeper, she traced the transactions to bookings for flights and accommodations, all leading to one destination: Bali. Bali? Why would Ryan need to go to Bali? And why hadn't he mentioned it? A cold knot of suspicion formed in her stomach. Was he escaping to start a new life? Had he met someone else during his frequent absences? The questions swirled endlessly, gnawing at her already frayed nerves. Fueled by a mix of anger and desperation, Eleanor decided to dig further. She called Ryan's colleagues under the pretense of confirming details about shared projects, hoping to uncover clues about his recent activities. Most claimed ignorance, but one offhand comment stood out. "Yeah, Ryan mentioned taking a sabbatical, soon. Something about traveling and working remotely. Seemed excited about it. Traveling and working remotely?" The pieces began falling into place. Ryan wasn't just leaving her. He was leaving everything behind. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. All this time she had assumed he would try to win her back after filing for divorce, clinging to the hope that their love story wasn't over. Instead, he was preparing to vanish completely, immersing himself in a world where she no longer existed. As Eleanor hung up the phone, tears streaming down her face, she realized something profound. Ryan's departure wasn't just about ending their marriage. It was about severing ties entirely. He wasn't running toward something. He was running away. Away from her. Away from their shared history. And perhaps most painfully, away from the emotional entanglements he couldn't face. For the first time since this nightmare began, Eleanor allowed herself to feel the full weight of her grief and her anger. Ryan had made his choice, and now it was time for her to make hers. If he could leave without looking back, then she would find a way to move forward too. But not before uncovering the truth about the man who had once promised to stand by her side forever. In the weeks following Ryan's departure, Eleanor found herself caught in a strange limbo. The house felt emptier than ever, not just because of his absence, but because of the unanswered questions that lingered like ghosts. Who was Ryan now? What had driven him to abandon not only their marriage, but also the life they had built together? And why Bali? Was it simply a random choice, or did it hold some deeper meaning? Determined to piece together the puzzle, Eleanor turned to the one place where she knew Ryan left traces of himself: the digital world. Though he had always been private about his online activities, Eleanor remembered snippets of information he'd casually mentioned over the years: his preference for certain forums, his fascination with remote work communities, and his occasional musings about escaping the monotony of corporate life. Armed with this knowledge, she began her search. Her first stop was LinkedIn. Ryan's profile hadn't been updated recently, but scrolling through his connections revealed a few names she didn't recognize: people who described themselves as digital nomads or remote entrepreneurs. Intrigued, she clicked on their profiles, hoping to find patterns or clues that might lead her closer to understanding Ryan's new life. One name stood out: a woman named Priya, based in Bali, whose profile picture showed her posing against a backdrop of lush rice paddies. Her bio read, "Helping professionals transition to location-independent lifestyles." Had Ryan sought her advice? Or worse, had they met in person? Next, Eleanor ventured into social media platforms. She scoured Instagram and Twitter, searching hashtags like Chakar Digital Nomad Life and Shark Bali Vibes. It didn't take long to stumble upon photos of co-working spaces nestled amidst tropical landscapes, beachside yoga sessions, and sunsets that seemed almost too perfect to be real. In one post, she spotted a familiar face, or rather, a silhouette. A man sitting alone at a cafe table, laptop open, staring out at the ocean. Though the photo was grainy and partially obscured by palm leaves, something about the posture struck a chord. It looked like Ryan, but it was Reddit that ultimately yielded the most startling discovery. On a subreddit dedicated to digital nomads, Eleanor came across an anonymous thread titled "Confessions of a Failing Husband." The original poster described feeling trapped in a loveless marriage, burdened by depression and the pressure to conform to societal expectations. They wrote about making the difficult decision to leave everything behind, not out of malice, but out of necessity, and starting anew in a foreign country where no one knew their past. Eleanor's heart raced as she read the post. Every word resonated painfully with what she had experienced with Ryan. The guilt, the withdrawal, the cryptic notes. It all made sense now. But the final paragraph left her reeling. "I know I've hurt her deeply, and I hate myself for it. But staying would have destroyed us both. Maybe someday she'll forgive me. Until then, I hope she finds happiness without me." It was signed simply, "A man running away from himself." Tears blurred Eleanor's vision as she closed her laptop. For months, she had convinced herself that Ryan's actions were selfish, even cruel. Yet here was undeniable proof that his decision wasn't made lightly. He hadn't run away from her. He had run away from the weight of his own despair. And yet, knowing this didn't bring the closure she had hoped for. Instead, it raised more questions. Why hadn't he trusted her enough to share his struggles? Why had he chosen silence? Over honesty? The answers eluded her, leaving her suspended between empathy and resentment. As the days passed, Eleanor found herself reflecting on the broader implications of Ryan's transformation. His journey into the world of digital nomadism highlighted a growing trend among disillusioned professionals, seeking freedom from traditional constraints. But at what cost? By embracing this lifestyle, Ryan had severed ties not only with her, but also with the responsibilities and relationships that once defined him. Was this liberation, or merely another form of isolation? For Eleanor, the revelation forced a reckoning. She realized that while Ryan's choices were his own, they had shaped hers as well. She could either dwell on the pain of his abandonment or use it as fuel to rebuild her life. Slowly but surely, she began shifting her focus inward, channeling her energy into rediscovering who she was outside the shadow of their failed marriage. One evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset, Eleanor made a decision. She wouldn't let Ryan's story define her any longer. If he could reinvent himself in a distant land, then she could do the same, right where she stood. With newfound determination, she opened her laptop and started drafting an article about her experience. It was time to turn her pain into purpose, her loss into something meaningful. Little did she know, this act of vulnerability would set her on a path she never could have anticipated. The decision to write about her experience was both terrifying and liberating. Eleanor knew that sharing such a personal story would expose her to judgment and scrutiny, but she also felt an undeniable pull, a need to reclaim her narrative. Sitting at her desk one quiet morning, she poured her heart onto the page, recounting the unraveling of her marriage, Ryan's emotional withdrawal, and the shocking discovery of his new life as a digital nomad. But more importantly, she wrote about her own journey, the moments of despair, the anger, the confusion, and ultimately, the slow but steady process of finding herself again. When the article went live on a popular online magazine, Eleanor braced herself for backlash. Instead, she was met with an outpouring of support. Comments flooded in from readers who resonated deeply with her story. Men and women alike, who had faced similar betrayals or struggled with the complexities of modern relationships. Some shared their own experiences of being left behind. Others expressed gratitude for her vulnerability, saying it gave them the courage to confront their own struggles. The response was overwhelming, and for the first time in months, Eleanor felt a flicker of hope, not just for herself, but for the possibility of helping others navigate their pain. The viral success of the article opened doors Eleanor hadn't anticipated. Podcast hosts reached out, inviting her to share her insights on love, loss, and resilience. Mental health advocates praised her candidness, urging her to speak at conferences and workshops. At first, Eleanor hesitated. Public speaking wasn't her forte, and the thought of reliving her trauma on stage made her stomach churn. But something inside her whispered that this was her chance to turn a deeply painful chapter into something meaningful, to transform her scars into strength. Her first speaking engagement was nerve-wracking. Standing behind the podium, she clutched her notes tightly, her palms slick with sweat. As she began to speak, her voice wavered, but then something shifted. She looked out at the audience, faces filled with empathy and understanding, and realized they weren't there to judge her. They were there because they needed to hear what she had to say. By the end of her talk, the room erupted in applause, and Eleanor felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't known in years. Through these opportunities, Eleanor began to rebuild her identity. No longer was she just Ryan's ex-wife, or the woman who got left behind. She was becoming someone new, someone stronger, wiser, and unapologetically herself. Her freelance design work took on new meaning as she incorporated themes of healing and transformation into her art. Clients praised her ability to capture raw emotion in her creations, and soon, her portfolio gained recognition beyond her local community. Amidst this whirlwind of change, Eleanor found solace in unexpected places. Yoga classes became her sanctuary, where she learned to breathe through discomfort and embrace the present moment. Friendships deepened as friends rallied around her, offering encouragement and reminding her of her worth. Even her neighbors, once distant acquaintances, grew closer after hearing snippets of her story through media coverage. They brought over casseroles, offered kind words, and invited her to gatherings she might otherwise have skipped. But perhaps the most surprising development came during a photography exhibit hosted by a local gallery. Eleanor attended reluctantly, persuaded by Claire, who insisted it would be good for her to step outside her comfort zone. The exhibit showcased works by Daniel Harper, a traveling photographer whose images captured the beauty and complexity of human connection across cultures. His photographs of bustling markets in Morocco, serene temples in Japan, and sun-drenched beaches in Bali stirred something within her, a longing for exploration and self-discovery. After the event, Eleanor found herself lingering near Daniel's booth, drawn to a particular photo of a lone figure walking along a misty mountain trail. When Daniel approached to thank her for attending, Their conversation flowed effortlessly. He spoke passionately about his travels, the people he'd met, and the lessons he'd learned about resilience and adaptability. In turn, Eleanor shared bits of her own story, surprised by how easily the words came now. Over coffee the following week, they discovered a shared appreciation for storytelling and creativity. Daniel listened intently as Eleanor described her plans to write a book based on her experiences, offering thoughtful feedback and encouragement. For the first time since Ryan's departure, Eleanor felt seen, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a multifaceted individual worthy of love and respect. As their friendship blossomed, Eleanor realized that Daniel represented everything she had been searching for, without even knowing it. Someone who valued independence yet cherished connection. Someone who understood the importance of healing while embracing the future. Though she wasn't ready to dive into another relationship, the possibility of something meaningful no longer felt out of reach. By the end of the year, Eleanor stood at a crossroads, looking back at the wreckage of her past with clarity and compassion. Ryan's absence had forced her to confront parts of herself she might never have acknowledged otherwise. It had pushed her to grow, to create, and to connect with others in ways she hadn't imagined possible. And though she still carried the weight of unanswered questions about him, she no longer let them define her. Eleanor's final act of closure came unexpectedly. One evening, as she sat journaling by candlelight, she decided to write Ryan a letter, not to send, but to release the lingering emotions tied to their shared history. In it, she thanked him for teaching her about love, sacrifice, and the importance of prioritizing one's mental health. She forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because holding on to resentment no longer served her. Folding the letter neatly, she tucked it away in a drawer, symbolically closing the chapter of her life that had begun and ended with him. As dawn broke the next morning, Eleanor stepped onto her porch, breathing in the crisp autumn air. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt truly free, not just from Ryan, but from the expectations and fears that had held her captive for so long. The road ahead was uncertain, but she welcomed it with open arms, ready to embrace whatever adventures awaited her. The months that followed Eleanor's decision to let go of the past were transformative in ways she could never have predicted. Her book, titled Unraveled: Finding Light After Loss, became a beacon of hope for countless readers navigating their own emotional storms. Drawing from her experiences with Ryan's departure and her subsequent journey of self-discovery, Eleanor wove together raw honesty and gentle wisdom into a narrative that resonated deeply. The book quickly climbed bestseller lists, earning praise not only for its vulnerability, but also for its practical advice on healing and rebuilding after heartbreak. Eleanor found herself speaking at international conferences, sharing stages with renowned psychologists, authors, and mental health advocates. At one such event in New York City, she delivered a keynote address to a packed auditorium. As she stood under the spotlight, recounting her lowest moments and how they led to her greatest triumphs, she realized just how far she had come. The woman who once felt invisible now commanded attention. Not because of her pain, but because of her resilience. But it wasn't just professional success that marked this new chapter in her life. On a personal level, Eleanor began cultivating habits and hobbies that brought her joy outside the shadow of her past. She took up painting again, filling canvases with bold colors and abstract shapes that reflected her evolving emotions. She joined a local hiking group, exploring trails she'd never ventured onto before, marveling at the quiet beauty of nature. Each step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she thought she'd lost forever. Her friendship with Daniel deepened as well. Over time, their shared interests blossomed into something more, a connection rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Unlike her relationship with Ryan, which had often left her feeling drained and unbalanced, being with Daniel felt effortless. He encouraged her dreams without overshadowing them, celebrated her victories without jealousy, and listened to her fears without judgment. Together, They planned weekend trips to nearby towns, sampling local cuisines and photographing hidden gems along the way. With him, Eleanor discovered what it meant to be truly supported, not as a caregiver or savior, but as an equal partner. One crisp spring morning, Eleanor received an email notification on her phone. It was from an unfamiliar address, but the subject line caught her eye. A letter from Bali. Hesitating only briefly, she opened it. The message was short, written in Ryan's unmistakable tone. Eleanor, I came across your article recently and wanted to say, thank you. Your words helped me see things I hadn't allowed myself to face. Leaving wasn't easy, for either of us, but I needed to break free from the weight of my own expectations. I hope you've found peace. You deserve nothing less. Ryan. Reading his words stirred conflicting emotions within her: surprise, sadness, and ultimately gratitude. Ryan's acknowledgement didn't erase the pain he had caused, but it did offer a sense of resolution. For so long she had carried the burden of unanswered questions about his motives. Now, those questions no longer mattered. His letter confirmed what she already knew. He had made his choice, and she had made hers. There was no lingering resentment, only acceptance. That evening, Eleanor met Daniel at a cozy cafe downtown. They sat by the window, sipping hot chocolate as snowflakes drifted lazily outside. When Daniel asked how her day had been, she hesitated for a moment before pulling out her phone and showing him Ryan's email. To her relief, Daniel simply nodded thoughtfully. It sounds like closure, he said softly. Not just for him, but for you too. Eleanor smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Closure wasn't about forgetting or forgiving entirely. It was about releasing the hold the past had over her. And for the first time, she truly believed she had done that. As spring turned to summer, Eleanor embraced her new reality with open arms. Her book tour took her to cities across the country, where she connected with readers whose stories mirrored her own. She started teaching workshops on creative expression as a tool for healing, inspiring others to channel their pain into art, writing, or other forms of self-expression. Her work became a testament to the power of transformation, not just surviving loss, but thriving despite it. In September, Eleanor and Daniel embarked on a trip to Europe, a dream neither of them had dared to pursue until now. From the cobblestone streets of Paris to the sun-drenched cliffs of Santorini, they explored places that filled them with wonder and awe. One evening, as they watched the sunset over the Amalfi coast, Daniel reached for her hand and said, "You're extraordinary. You know that?" Eleanor laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm just trying to live fully," she replied. For the first time, I feel like I'm doing exactly that. By year's end, Eleanor looked back on the whirlwind of changes with a sense of profound gratitude. What had begun as a story of betrayal and heartbreak had transformed into one of empowerment and renewal. She had faced her darkest days head-on, emerging stronger and more radiant than ever. Her journey reminded her, and everyone who followed her story, that even in the wake of loss, there is always room for growth, love, and reinvention. And as she stood on the cusp of a brand new year, Eleanor knew one thing for certain. She was no longer defined by the man who vanished from her life. She was Eleanor Carter, artist, writer, advocate, and survivor. And her future stretched ahead, limitless and bright.